Good day to Dr. Shami and my fellow audience. My name is POOVI THANGAVELLOO and my metric number is 291478. So in this video today, we are going to present on the ethical dimensions of the labor management and governance using the 1MDB scandal as a core case study for this discussion. We begin by looking at the ethical values like transparency, accountability, fairness, and human dignities, which is essential to both leaderships and employment treatment. We apply ethical theories such like utilitarianism, right-based ethics, and social contract theories to evaluate how decisions in organizations impact not just profits but also for people. In Malaysia, serious labor issues persist, such like unfair wages, job insecurity, poor conditions, and work-life imbalance. These aren't just policy problems; they are also major ethical failures, we could say. Leaders have a moral duty to protect workers' rights, foster respectful environments, and also support whistleblowers. Unfortunately, the 1MDB scandal exposed what happened when that duty is ignored. It revealed corruption, abuse of power, and a collapse in ethical governance, shaking public's trust and damaging Malaysia's financial and social fabric. This also calls urgent reform, stronger accountability, ethical leadership, and a genuine culture of integrity, because without it, both labor rights and public governance continue to suffer. Okay, so moving on to the issue summary here, I'll be briefing about the first the ethical components, and then the issue that we took on to explain about the ethical management, which is the 1MDB scandal. So this issue summary is where I would explain about what it looks like when it works and what happens when it collapses. So the ethical management starts with the very core principles such like transparency, accountability, fairness, and respect for human dignity. These aren't just buzzwords, actually. These are very essentials for good shaping leaderships, responsible labor practices, and trustworthy governance. To evaluate ethical condition and conduct, we rely on the framework like utilitarianism, rights and duties, virtue ethics, and the social contract, as I explained before in the executive summary. This helps us to ask the questions such as, are actions serving the greater good? Are individual rights respected? Are leaders acting with integrity? So, in the workplace, these values should ensure fair wages, safe working conditions, job security, and that workers have a voice to voice out their opinion. But then we look at the 1MDB scandal, an example of everything gone wrong, right? Billions in the public funds were misused, driven by the abuse of power and total regard for oversight. Whistleblowers were silenced. Transparency and accountability were completely ignored. This wasn't just a financial crime, actually. It exposed a deep ethical failure that weakened the public's trust, hurt labor rights, and damaged Malaysia's reputation globally. So ultimately, the 1MDB case is more than a scandal. It's actually a warning of what happens when ethical principles are sidelined at the highest level, and a reminder of why we need to reform that the a center on ethical leaderships and institutional integrity. And that's all from me for now. And the discussion continues with the next presenter. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum and good day everyone. In this section, we will look at 6 main theories of labor ethics, each offering a different lens on how companies should treat their workers. First, utilitarianism is about achieving the greatest good for the greatest number. In labor, that means making decisions that benefit not just shareholders but also employees and society. For example, offering fair wages and safe working conditions may increase costs, but it can lead to higher morale, better retention, and improved public image. In Malaysia, this theory often comes out in minimum wage debates. The key challenge is balancing short-term costs with long-term benefits. Secondly, rights and duties. This theory focuses on the idea that all workers have basic rights, like fair pay and safe conditions, and employers have a duty to uphold them. In Malaysia, while we have labour law, enforcement is not always consistent, especially for migrant workers. Ethical companies should not violate rights even if it helps productivity. Withholding passport or forcing overtime may be profitable, but it goes against the basic human dignity. Next, ethics of care. Ethics of care highlights the need for empathy and attention to individual needs. This means managers should support workers not just through policies but also emotionally, especially in industries where employees are far from home. In Malaysia, that includes sectors like construction or domestic work. Example of care include flexible schedules for religious holidays or mental health supports. This builds trust and strengthens workplace relationships. Firstly, virtue ethics. Virtue ethics is about the character of the leader. A good employer acts with fairness, honesty, and compassion, not just because of the rules, but because it reflects who they are. In Malaysia, where some companies still treat labor as a cost to reduce, this theory calls for a change in mindset. For example, offering job stability and training shows integrity, even when it's not required by law. The fifth theory, which is social contract. The social contract theory sees employment as a mutual agreement. Workers give their time and effort, and employers must provide fair compensation and respect. This idea is built into Malaysia Employment Act, but is often ignored when companies rely on outsourced labor. For example, cleaners or guards hired through agencies may not get basic benefits. Ethical employers need to treat all workers fairly, regardless of their employment status. Lastly, integrated ethical approach. An integrated approach combines the strengths of all these theories. It recognizes that no single theory covers every situation. For example, laying off worker may seem efficient from a utilitarian view, but it may be violate rights and show a lack of care. In Malaysia's gig economy, ethical decisions involve fair pay, safety, non-discrimination, and support. Taking all this into account leads to more balanced and responsible labor practices.
Good day, everyone. My name is THENNARASU. My metric number is 290527. Today, I will be presenting on ethical issues in labor management and how they connect with labor rights and social responsibility. These topics are important because how we treat workers reflect our values and business and as a society. The first issue is about fair wages. Ethically, wages should not only follow legal standards but also match the cost of living. In Malaysia, the minimum wage was raised to RM 1,500 in 2022. But in cities like Kuala Lumpur, critics argue this amount is still not enough for a decent life. The real issue arises when companies keep most of the profits and pay executives huge bonuses, but pay frontline workers just the minimum. This creates a big income gap and goes against the fairness and employee welfare. The second point is job security. This became a serious issue during the COVID-19 pandemic when many employees in Malaysia lost their jobs. Some companies downsize without giving proper support to their workers. Another concern is outsourcing to low-wage countries, which reduces job opportunities for locals. Employers must act ethically by being transparent during layoff and providing support like retraining or severance pay. When companies handle such situation with honesty and care, they can maintain employee trust even in hard time. The next issue is worker exploitation. Unfortunately, some companies still depend on unfair labor practices, like using undocumented workers, offering poor pay and or unsafe working condition. A well-known case in Malaysia was the Top Glove scandal in 2020. Foreign workers were found to be living in overcrowded housing, working for longer hours, and facing a payment delay. To prevent this, businesses must ensure ethical labor practices throughout their supply chain and carry out their regular audit. Ethics in labor management must extend beyond just their direct employees, but also to contractors and suppliers. Another key issue is workplace condition. Workplaces must be safe, healthy, and supportive, not just physically, but also mentally. In Malaysia, DOSH is the agency that monitors occupational safety. However, accidents and diseases are still reported, especially in construction and manufacturing sectors. Besides physical safety, mental health should also be protected. Stress and overwork can affect performance and well being. Creating a supportive environment shows that companies value their workers. Moving on, let's talk about work life balance. Many employees today struggle with long working hours, lack of flexibility, and burnout. After the pandemic, more people realized that remote and hybrid work is possible and helpful. Employers Federation (MEF) in 2023 demand that demand for flexible work has increased, but many companies are still slow to adapt. Businesses have an ethical responsibility to protect their workers from overwork and stress. By offering flexibility, they show care for their employees uh, and personal life and overall health. Now we move into topic of labor rights and social responsibility. Labor rights are also human rights. Around the world, including in Malaysia, we still see problems like forced labor and denial of worker rights. Malaysia has been in the spotlight because forced labor cases in palm oil and rubber glove industries. For example, U.S. Custom and Border Protection (CPB) banned imports from Malaysian companies like Sandabi Plantation and Top Glove due to human rights violations. This example shows that ethical labor practices are not just local concern; they affect global trade and companies' reputation. One way companies can show responsibility is through corporate social responsibility or CSR. CSR means going beyond profit. It includes fair treatment of workers, equal opportunities, and community involvement. For instance, companies like Petronas and Nestle Malaysia supports skills training for communities, promote gender equality, and ensure ethical supply chains. CSR improves employee satisfaction, builds public trust, and contributes to long-term business success. Lastly, we look at fair trade and ethical sourcing. Many products we use daily come from complex global supply chains, often from regions with poor labor conditions. Ethical sourcing means companies take responsibility for how and where their products are made. In Malaysia, companies like IKEA have pledged to only work with suppliers who meet labor and environmental standards. By following fair trade practices, companies can help improve workers' welfare and promote fair economic growth. To conclude, labor management is not just about hiring and paying people. It's about treating them with respect, dignity, and fairness. Ethical issues like fair wages, job security, safe condition, and work-life balance affect not only workers but also the overall performance and reputation of a company. That's all from me. Thank you.
Hello, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is MOHAMAD HAZIM YACCOB inside, and my metric number is 290341. And my part today is ethical leadership in labor relation and case study and real world example. So, for ethical leadership in labor relation, which consists of the role of the managers, employee advocacy and whistleblowing, and power dynamic, we start with the role of managers first. Managers are in charge of making sure that employees receive fair and respectful treatment. For example, if anything happened to the employee, managers are the one responsible for each of one of them. Second, managers are crucial in establishing equitable labor agreement, which means the agreement between employee and company must be set up by the manager, should be in good shape and also fair between the company and also the employee. Last one is manager need to be adept at settling dispute. Means manager should be skilled in resolving conflict. For employee advocacy and whistleblowing, creating a supportive climate, manager must ensure a workplace where employees feel safe and empowered to report unethical behavior. Clear policy and protection means establish explicit rules that support employee advocacy and whistleblowing. And the last point here is proper reporting channel. Provide access to HR department to report unethical behavior directly to the HR department. Next, for power dynamic, imbalance of power enables unethical treatment. Employer normally hold more power and resources, leading to unethical labor practice like low wages, long hours, and unsafe conditions. Ethical leadership must address power abuse. Ethical leaders have duty to prevent power abuse. Transparency and accountability prevent corruption. Leaders should be transparent and accountable, as seen in one MDB case, where unchecked power and lack of oversight lead to corruption. We proceed with the next part, which is a case study and real world example. Consists of 3 parts, which is ethical labor practice, incorporation, labor scandal, and unethical practice. And also the last one is labor in developing countries. So number 1, ethical labor practice incorporation. Strict supply chain oversight accountability. Pentagonia ensure ethical labor practice by carefully selecting supplier, conducting regular audits, and adhering to Fair Labor Association (FLA) standard to guarantee fair wages and safe condition. Transparency and ethical sourcing. The company built consumer trust by being transparent about its supply chain and working only with ethical manufacturer, while actively preventing child labor and forced labor. Employee-centered workplace culture. Internally, Pentagonia support work-life balance, offer flexible benefit like paid parental leave and on-site childcare, and promote inclusivity, showing that ethical treatment of employee can drive business success. Number 2, labor scandal and unethical practice. For example, here we have Rana Plaza collapse exposed survival ethical failure. Over 1,100 workers died due to ignored safety warning, highlighting how power imbalance, negligence, and profit-driven motive led to a major labor tragedy. Corporate accountability and global backlash. The disaster led to public outrage and pressure on internal brand to take responsibility, revealing the ethical risks in global supply chain and sparking reform effort like the Bangladesh Accord. Shift in consumer awareness and industry reputation. The event damaged fast fusion credibility, prompting greater consumer security, and emphasized that unethical labor practice harm brand trust and loyalty, not just worker. Number 3, and the last point, labor in developing countries. The example here we have outsourcing often leads to exploitation. While outsourcing to developed countries can create jobs, it often results to low wages, unsafe conditions, and violation for labor rights, as company prioritize cost-cutting over ethics. Real-world case highlighting ethical failure. Tragedy like the Rana Plaza collapse in Bangladesh and worker suicide at Foxconn, China, exposed that human cost of unethical labor practice in global supply chain. Corporate ethical responsibility in global. Multinational company must uphold international labor standard regardless of location, ensuring fair pay, safe work environment, union right, and third-party audits to maintain brand trust and long-term sustainability. That's all for me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum everyone. My name is Wanur Aisyah binti Wan SYED AZMAN, metric number 291301. And for the conclusion of 1MDB scandal, it stands as a glaring example of institutional and moral failure, where a fund created to promote national development was instead exploited for a personal and political gain. This billion-dollar fraud severely damaged Malaysia's economy, reputation, and public trust, highlighting a total collapse of ethical leadership marked by a lack of moral awareness, judgment, and action. The scandal persisted due to compromise into institution and deliberate concealment of wrongdoing by those in power. It underscored the urgent need for transparency, accountability, and moral integrity in leadership to restore public confidence and prevent future abuse of power. For the ethical lesson, the 1MDB scandal offers powerful ethical lessons for leaders, institutions, and society. It undergoes the vital role of moral leadership, integrity, and accountability in public service, showing how greed-driven decisions by those in power can deeply harm a nation. The fiasco highlights the importance of ethical decision-making, even when personally or politically inconvenienced, and the need for the institution to foster a culture grounded in honesty, justice, and transparency. Ultimately, 1MDB is a reminder that ethical responsibility is the foundation of credible leadership and institution effectiveness, and that future leaders must learn from these failures to build a more just and trustworthy society.